Hey there. So today we're going to go through a simulation of a zombie outbreak that's going to be taking place at the Magic Kingdom. So we're looking through this simulation right now, and typically when it comes to these simulations, we like to see trying to recreate what the environment will look like. So the software today we'll be using is going to be NetLogo. It's a fairly easy to get into simulation software. But the reason why I wanted to do it this is because it keeps everything simple and pretty straightforward in terms of how everything is set up. So on the main interface that we see here, we'll see sort of these white avatar looking people. Those will be the civilians, or the humans in this case. Those that are showing up in red are going to be the zombies, and the ones in green with the bandolier across their chests are going to be the soldiers, or how we call these variables, called the rescue team. And basically, what this software is going to show us is a simulation, basically to see what happens as we keep these set of variables as they are. And then we can change some of the variables on the left-hand side just to make sure that we are getting, a different outcome for each type of simulation. The simulation that I'll be using today is going to be the version 2, and this has nodes in it. A node is basically where people will coalesce. So since we're looking at the Magic Kingdom, we can identify what these areas are. The yellow is Main Street, blue is Cinderella's Castle, pink is Fantasyland, gray is going to be Tomorrowland, and green will be Adventureland or Frontierland. We can probably combine those both, Adventure and Frontierland, into one area, since I know that at the park they're fairly close to one another. But we're going to be looking at this software just as a way for us just to examine basically what the outcome is going to be. And I'll be adjusting some of the variables on the left-hand side. And these will be a way that we can just begin to interact with the simulation so we can see the outcome for each type of setting. So we're going to be starting this simulation. We can pay attention to the ticks. I'll be doing a more in-depth review of, comparing one type of simulation, the outcome that it produces, to another similar one and seeing how long it takes. We can calculate how long it takes by examining the ticks. And once the simulation has run through and the outcome is either the humans live and the zombies die, or everyone turns into zombies, we can just examine how long it took between each type of setting and sort of use that as a difference between the both to calculate the delta between the two events that we're going to be running the simulation on. So let's get started with this first simulation. So I've initially set the rescue team up at 5, zombies at 5, humans at 100. The infection radius is going to be 1. That's fairly close. We could extend that to 2, but I could adjust that as well if we ever need to go more than that, but I think 1 is sufficient. The rescue team speed is going to be, the rate at which these people with the bandoliers are going to be moving across the map. And the human speed is going to be set at 1. The zombie speed is going to be set at 1. And the zombie infection probability, which will only be applying to the rescue team, is going to be set at 0. So basically, you can think of the rescue team as being invincible in this case. So just based on these variables, it's always good to envision what the simulation is going to end up being. This isn't to say this is exactly going to happen the way you do it, but it's a good way of sort of predicting where the simulation will go. So I'll give everyone maybe just a few seconds, just based on what we see on the left-hand side and how the variables are set, how you think the simulation is going to end up. All right, so maybe you have a picture of it in your head, which is great. Just take some time to look on the left-hand side, see how the variables are set, and how you think the outcome is going to play out. So we can go ahead and start the simulation. I'll just click go. Basically, you can see the humans starting to coalesce around the different areas. So basically, they'll start going to whichever area is closest to them. And the zombies are effectively, their logic is that they're going to be chasing down these humans. And the logic for the rescue team is that they know exactly where the zombies are at all times, so they can effectively hunt them down as quickly as possible. So it looks to be, I should say, that everyone in Fantasy, Tomorrowland, Main Street, and Cinderella's Castle are preserved. Zombie count is at 0. It took us around, 55 ticks to get there. So you can see just based on this outcome and how everything was set up in this type of simulation that it took us around 51 ticks or so for the rescue team to clear out all the zombies before they could start infecting humans. So based on this simulation, the humans lived, the majority of them lived, and the rescue team, of course, lived. So if you predicted that this outcome was basically going to be that some humans would unfortunately perish, but the zombie count would ultimately go to 0 and the rescue team would stay the same, then of course you envisioned it correctly. If you envisioned that the human count would go to 0 and the zombies would go to 0, but the rescue team would live, well, it appears as though that was not the case either. So, we can see that just based on this, that we had a fairly good probable, or not, I shouldn't say probable, but we had a fairly good outcome in terms of all the information that we saw here. So we're going to go and set this up again, but before we do that, we're going to adjust some of the variables. So instead of the zombie infection probability being at 0%, we're going to adjust it so that it's at 10% probability. So basically, when a zombie interacts with a rescue team, there is a 10% chance that the rescue team member will turn into a zombie, which would effectively reduce the count of the rescue team, which is in 5. So we're going to leave the rescue team count at 5. We're going to adjust the zombie count back to 5. The human count will be at 100, infection radius at 1, and the speed is good for now. So the only variable we are adjusting in this simulation is the zombie infection probability. So we're going to click Setup, and we are going to start this brand new simulation. All right, so as it was fairly similar in the first one, the zombies will start infecting an area, start to chase down those humans in the Magic Kingdom. And the rescue team is effectively all-knowing. They know exactly where the zombies are. All right, so it looks like in this case, the human count is going to get depleted fairly quickly. And you can see the rescue team is only at 1. So even with a 10% chance of infection, we got that count down to 1. All right, so now the rescue team is at 0. There are 2 humans left. There is a sole survivor who is in the pursuit of his life that has quickly ended. Okay, so this took us at around 48 ticks or so. So this was a fairly quick outcome. And you can see that this outcome was drastically different. So even just adjusting the zombie infection probability upwards by 10%, we can see that there was a fairly precipitous fall in terms of how quickly the rescue team is going to fall, and turn into zombies. And then we can see that the human count effectively went to 0, and there are 89 zombies that are just walking around. So it's interesting to think about this from a perspective that with a 10% probability adjustment of the infection rate for the rescue team, that it made a very big difference in terms of the outcome of these events. And I don't think anyone would be completely immune to a zombie infection. Maybe if you were, already had the antibodies for, let's say, a hypothetical zombie virus. But let's go ahead and adjust the zombie infection probability for the rescue team down to just 5%. So it's half of what it was in the previous simulation, and we're going to leave all variables the same. And then we're going to click Setup once more to run a new simulation. All right, well, in this case, it looks very similar, of course, to the first two iterations that we ran. The rescue team is in pursuit of hunting down these zombies. There are only 2 zombies left. Now there are 3. So yeah, as you can see, once these zombies get into these node areas, the infection spreads very quickly. I mean, it just happens to be that everyone is in one centralized location. Of course, they're starting to back up, but yeah, this is where it just starts to multiply out of control fairly quickly. So, I mean, even just looking at this from, regardless of how this outcome is going to end up, which it doesn't look favorable for the rescue team, but yeah, the rescue team's at 0. So these zombies are just going to infect everybody else. So I think one thing that's important to think about this is there's 2 ways of looking at this. So you can see that if the rescue team can get to the zombies prior to them starting to really multiply rapidly in these areas, then there is a good chance that they can prevent a lot of damage, which I think coincides to a lot of illnesses. Once people could really isolate the virus before it has the chance to spread, it's their best chance of reducing the impact of the virus to other, to other people and populations and societies around the world. So we're going to stop this simulation. What took us about 90 ticks in this case. So it made the full infection slower. So adjusting the zombie infection probability for the rescue team. That variable, if we drop it by half, we almost get more time before the virus eventually takes over. So from the other simulation that we just saw, where we had the zombie infection probability at 10%, it took us about 48 ticks for everything to wrap up, where the rescue team went to 0, human count went to 0, and there were some zombies on the map. This time, it took us 95 ticks to get here by just simply adjusting the zombie infection probability downward by 5%. So it prolonged the time that it took for us to get to the same end result by adjusting the zombie infection probability. So what I'm curious is that if we multiply based on our first simulation at 10% up to 20%, it would be interesting to see if the infection rate takes even less time. So that would be very insightful if it does, but let's go and see. Let's go ahead and set this up once more. We'll leave every other variable the same with the exception of the zombie infection probability going upwards to 20%. So this happened 54, 53 ticks. So it was a reduction in terms of how quickly the spread happened. Of course, the rescue team quickly went down to 0. But the zombie count also ticked up. It looks like this was actually the first simulation in which the zombie count ended up greater than the human population in which it started, which I think is easy to explain. It's just that the rescue team was not able to completely eliminate enough zombies in time compared to the other iterations that we ran this on. And I think that's largely contributed to how quickly the infection spread to the rescue team themselves, since the percentage is at around 20%. So it is a fairly good chance that they are going to convert even upon the first interaction that they have with a zombie. So, a 20% chance that, that they're turning. So, and then if you're surrounded by five zombies, you can easily see how the chance of you, in the event that you're surrounded by five zombies, of you turning into a zombie at 20% is fairly high. Even just adjusting the infection probability, up or down, can either shorten, or in some types, at some, threshold, even heighten the amount of zombies that are going to spawn. Meaning, the rescue team was not able to eliminate enough zombies in time before that infection rate really started to kick into the next gear. So, but I think it's just interesting. Not that this would ever really happen to Magic Kingdom. I don't think they think a zombie apocalypse is real, but I just like to play with this just so I can send you some fun interactions and some simulations that can probably mimic what would eventually be going down at the Magic Kingdom. And yes, there's a very high chance that if there was a zombie outbreak in the Magic Kingdom, everyone would be turning into zombies there. It's not that everyone is well trained to handle a zombie apocalypse. No one has necessarily the weapons to offset a zombie, especially when you're in the Magic Kingdom and you have to go through security in the first place. So they would probably prevent you from taking any sharp objects or blunt objects that can really do damage. But it's interesting to think about it from that perspective. So if you like what you see, always feel free to like and subscribe. That means so much to me. And I'll keep you in tune for the next, for the next simulation that I'll be doing on my channel. We'll probably be adjusting a little more variables this time, but it was fun to look at it from this perspective by just adjusting the zombie infection probability that would only apply to the rescue team. So thanks for watching. Hope everyone has a fantastic rest of their day.